Good morning, or is it just good afternoon, actually, and welcome to the first webinar of the year from Posturite. Thank you for joining us. Today, David Kirtley, our seating consultant, and me will be talking about choosing the right products for your Agile workers. Please be assured that if you have any technical problems, we will be recording this, and so it'll be available on a website afterwards. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Katharine and I aren't planning on talking for too long. We've probably got 15-20 minutes of content. So if you guys have got any questions at all, then you can answer the questions and we'll have a look at those towards the end. And I think we're really proud of the fact we're doing Agile working at its best. So I'm in a showroom in London at the moment. I think Katharine's at our head office in Sussex. So we are really doing Agile working as it should be done. So hope you enjoy it, and Katharine will start things off.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Right, so choosing your products. On screen now, you'll see what I'm intending to briefly cover this morning. I think, like it or not, most of us are now dealing with this issue. It's been talked about for years that we're going to become more flexible and agile in the way we work. But I think most of us are facing this. I think it's a really positive thing. I think getting people moving more and choosing the right place to work, I think is really empowering. The difficulty is, I think all companies are doing things in a slightly different way. So that can make life a challenge. But there are a few core features, and I hope that what we're going to cover today may be of benefit. I thought about some of the common environments that myself and our staff are visiting, and I think probably these are the ones that we see most frequently. We still have the traditional one-person workstations, although these can be in different places. They can be, in offices, or they can be at home these days. So we're still seeing those. We see multi-user workstations, hot desks, but sometimes people use these infrequently, and sometimes they're used every day, so using a different desk in the same office. You just need to step outside and see people working in cafes and on transport, and I myself, I do the same. I think it's very liberating. I think it makes good use of your day, and actually I find quite a lot of inspiration sort of sitting on the train thinking and being able to make presentations and things. So I do think that's positive. And we're also beginning to see less traditional workspaces and facilities, so like some soft seating, which again I think is useful, but we have to make sure that they're all used in the right way. One of the human's great reasons for, I suppose, our success is our adaptability. And I think we see that as a great benefit. And I would agree with that in the short term, people are able to overcome problems really very easily. However, if we adapt in the long term, this can cause us problems. If you consider for a moment working at a workstation that's poorly set up for you, maybe the mouse is at a distance or the chair doesn't quite work, you can work at that workstation, and that's fine. And no harm will come if you do it for a short period of time. But if we require people to adapt and stretch and sit awkwardly for longer periods, that's when problems are going to occur. So, as I say, we want to have the benefit of our adaptability, but we don't want to abuse it and land up with problems. Because if we do, we're going to land up with these sorts of things going on. And as we all know, poor postures, lack of movement, pressure and stress leads to short-term and long-term ill health. So, as usual, we want to gain these benefits, but limit the drawbacks. And that, I think, is the challenge of us designing agile working environments. For us to be able to do this effectively, we need to start asking some questions. And these are some of the questions that I think we really need to understand, or the answers we need to understand to be able to design environments correctly. I'm not intending to go through all these, and you can rerun these, but we really need to understand where people are working, what they need to do, and how long they need to do things for. If we don't understand this, we are going to be relying on their ability to work around. When I boil this down, and a lot of things come to this final question, which I think is very important. For me, how much inputting people are doing is absolutely crucial. And I would suggest the more inputting that people are having to do into their mobile IT, then the more important the setup needs to be. We have a lot more flexibility reading and listening with, in different postures. But when it comes to actually getting the hands on the keyboard or on the touch screen, if we don't get the position right, then we're going to land up with problems. We need to also remember, us all being human, how we make decisions. And a lot of the choices that we all make can be swayed by short-term gains rather than looking after our health long-term. And this is where understanding what people need to do and why they make decisions really makes, we need to get sorted. I think a good example would be, sometimes if you've got a piece of work to do, your choice is, do you want to get home early and you could perhaps manage that long email on the phone, or actually would you be better off going to an office and writing that on a well set up hot desk? I leave it to you what the answer to that particular question would be, but I think we would all sometimes struggle. So I'm just putting this back up. I know this is a fairly old image, but I think good inputting postures really do not change. And if we require people to input, if we sit in postures that require the upper limbs, or stand in postures that require upper limbs to be in awkward positions, we know that problems will occur. But do we need to have this posture all the time? I would suggest if we're inputting, we probably need to get pretty close to it. So how do we achieve this with mobile IT? Well, here's a good example. If we are inputting and we've got a laptop, then maybe providing some accessories to raise the laptop, provide a separate keyboard and mouse, are still applicable. So maybe if people are working from home and they're doing a significant piece of work, providing this equipment could be helpful. And because it's portable, we're able to store it out of the way so they don't need a dedicated workstation. Or maybe, like myself, I work with clients and I go to their sites, and if they don't have hot desks, then I'll take my equipment with me, and that maybe still be a valid option. Although I have to say, less and less do I need to take my equipment with me, because more of my clients have hot desks that I can use myself. And because I know them, I'm able to do that. So coming on to hot desking or multi-user DSC equipment, and I think this is probably where most of the questions that we are seeing comes from. I want to look at the different elements and provide a little bit of advice. And we'll start off with the desk. We all need a desk if we are doing inputting and that sort of thing. And I really would suggest that if we're putting in multi-user desks, we really do need an option for height adjustability. People of different shapes and sizes, and we do need to be able to get the desks at the right height. And it would be really nice to be able to have sit stand to encourage the well-being and movement of our staff. This can obviously be achieved by either by desks or by desktop options. I also like footrests at these workstations. Although I often don't need a footrest, I do find it useful to promote movement, and I find when standing I use it to help me vary my position so I don't statically stand in one position for too long. So I think footrests at multi-user workstations or having some around is very, very useful. The other thing you might want to consider is, do you want to be able to reposition the desks so that people can work in collaborative groups? And if they can, maybe we need to consider putting casters on the bottom of our desks. But if we're going to start doing that, if people are using DSE, then we're going to need to consider how power is provided as well. So I think we need to think these situations through very clearly. The big area, I think, is over chairs. And I'm going to hand over to David in a minute, but I just want to say a few things myself. A lot of people don't adjust their chairs at their own workstations. And so assuming that people are going to spend time and energy at multi-user workstations, I think we might be flawed in that thinking. But yet people do have different body shapes, and we do need to make sure that the chairs provide good support. So this is quite a challenging area. Let's also not forget that we may have some less formal seating areas that can be used. I mean, particularly if you're reading on your laptop or you're using communication tools, maybe sitting in a soft seating would be appropriate. But I come back and say, is it appropriate for inputting? David, I said enough on chairs. You've got far more experience in these multi-user environments. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Katharine. So when looking at the selection of chairs, basically we've broken it down into 4 factors. So Katharine, if you could just move us on. Katharine's controlling the screen at the moment. So looking at 4 factors, it's basically the suitability, adaptability, durability, and simplicity of the products. And I think if you can focus on those 4 areas, then I think we're going to get most of the way there to making sure we've got a good agile working environment with regards to chairs. So first point is the suitability. So looking at that is really identifying what the area is being used for. Katharine mentioned it earlier about soft seating. In our head office, for instance, we're based down in Sussex, and you know, for me to drive there is probably about 3.5, 4 hours. But we have an area, we have a breakfast bar where I can touch down, I can catch up on my emails, do 20 minutes, half an hour work before I get stuck into any meetings with colleagues. That's perfect for that use. If I was to work there for 8 hours a day or a couple of days at a time, then that isn't suitable. So I think the first thing is, working out what the area is being used for. Is it a touchdown area, in which case we could probably be more lenient with regards to regulations? Is it semi-permanent, where your employees might be working there for 2 or 3 days at a time, or even longer? Having a look at length of use and the work surface height, we just touched on that. The breakfast bars and the higher level sort of meeting tables are a more common trait at the moment. And again, making sure that they're suitable for the task in hand. And something that gets neglected a lot, I think, is the floor type. If you put a high chair with standard casters on for a carpeted floor on a hard floor, it's not necessarily the stable base that you might want, and people could be moving around all over the place. And in which case they stop using that working environment. So that's the suitability. Moving on to adaptability. I think we need to set our sights high on this. I think it used to be, if we can sort of cater for 90–95% of the population, we'd be doing a good job. I personally think we can get up towards 98–99% now. So we've got some good examples of recent projects that we've done that we've supplied, for instance, 550 Hawg chairs to one of our clients, and from there we've had 4 instances where the people couldn't get comfortable. 3 of those cases we've had to adapt the existing chair by putting a neck rest and an extended gas stem on, and in 1 case we had to get a new chair altogether. But I do believe that some of the better ergonomic chairs now provide the scope to fit more people. It's important to look at the upper weight limit. The better standard now is 150 kilograms, whereas it used to be 120. The seat depth range, I think, as a bare minimum, needs to be 5 centimeters, preferably more. And again, some of the better options are going as far as 10–12 centimeters seat depth adjustment. I think armrests always get a bit of a bad rap, and I think traditionally, poorly designed armrests where they're fixed and bulky, people decide that they actually don't like armrests. So as soon as you put armrests on a chair, they decide they don't like them for their previous experience. So I think armrest function is very important. Make sure we've got height adjustment, make sure we've got depth adjustment. And in some cases, you can get function where the armrests either slide back out of the way or push back out of the way. So for those people who don't particularly like them, they can be almost removed altogether, although not physically removed. And have a look at your employee demographic. I think you're the best people to gauge whether the size and the stature of your workforce. Are they particularly tall? Are they particularly petite? So you can have a look at the demographic and then working out whether there's a particular type or style or size of chair that would suit those employees. We then come on to the durability. And I think this, for me, this is one of the more important factors. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think with a multi-user workstation, there can be a lack of ownership and accountability. So because they don't necessarily own that workstation, there's less care about where they work. This doesn't happen in all cases, but it's certainly something I've seen more often than not, I think. So one thing is that the users don't take as much ownership of their workstation. And the other factor is if it is truly a multi-user workstation, then the adjustments are going to be used on a daily basis, if not more. So the durability of the chair, the warranty of the chair, I think is more significant in an agile working environment than before. There's some really good indications of durability. As I mentioned before, the upper weight limit. I think that's a good sign of quality and the actual parts, the physical parts that the chairs are made of. The length of warranty that I've just mentioned there. And when looking at the warranty, have a look at what that covers. There's certain chairs that you see with a headline figure of 10 years or 12 years or 15 years. But actually, when you drill down to that, moving parts might only be 5 years, gas stems might only be 3 years. So have a look what the warranty is and what parts that covers. The repairability, again, there are going to need to be repairs over time, and replacement parts, how available are they? You know, are the manufacturers future-proofing those replacement parts? So you know through the lifespan of that product, which might be 10, 15 years, you can get replacement parts for that whole period. And then lastly, the simplicity of it. I think the chairs, there's a happy medium here. I think that the chairs need to be simple to operate. Okay, what I've seen a couple of trends recently that there are certain chairs that are over simple with very much reduced adjustments, designed specifically for an agile working environment. Personally, I think if they're too simple, then there's not enough adjustment for it to be tailored to the individual. So I really think there is a happy medium for the chairs to be adjustable for your colleagues with different sizes and statures, but also to be simple to adjust. And then the employee needs to understand the needs of that as well. There needs to be a responsibility with the employee to look after themselves. And as Katharine mentioned earlier, that responsibility to carry out their work in the best environment that's available to them at the time. So those are my 4 parts on that. I've got a couple of conclusions from my side of things. With the agile working and with, I saw a client this morning and we were talking about it. It's a change of culture. And that can be one of the bigger challenges I see in organizations. First of all, the company has a responsibility to get things right and to make sure that the working environment is suitable for the work that's being carried out. So start with the end in mind. What do you think it's going to look like and how do we get to that point? And then from there, once the company's got it right, there's that personal responsibility, that individual responsibility to look after themselves and to do things in the right process. I've also seen pretty loose trial processes. I probably wouldn't even call them trial, but I think it's really, really important to have a robust trial process where you get good feedback, you get measured feedback from employees, from end users as to not just the chair, it could be monitor arms, it could be the desk, it could be other parts that make up the workstation, it could be even the technology, the laptops, the phone systems. Get a robust trial process and certainly do mock-ups. I think that's one of the important things is, get those desks in place, see how they operate, see how they adjust to different users. But the mock-ups with suitable chairs around it, I think you then start putting in a really good, robust trial process. And employees can be engaged. You get that level of employee engagement, which is always good when you're going through changes and ways of working. And then lastly from me, one of the key drivers in agile working, one is to adapt to the flexible needs of workers. We all work differently now. I probably spend a day and a half at my desk at home. Other times I'm dropping in. I might use my client premises. I might use our suppliers' offices like I am today. So there is that adaptability in working towards flexible working, but also from there is a saving on estate costs. And when you look at usually the percentage of desks to employees is anywhere between 70 to 80%. As a result, estate costs can be saved by 20 to 30%. So you might be able to go from 5 floors to 4 floors. You might be able to go to 5 locations to 4 locations. So there can be some significant savings there. What I'd love to see is those savings that are made on estate costs are then reinvested, or part of them are reinvested into making sure the workplace is as good as possible and making sure that some of those savings are ring-fenced. And companies must invest in ergonomics. It is important. I know we're biased, but it is vital to the productivity and the function of the workspace. And also from what we've seen is that with these changes of ways of working, changes of culture, the new workplace has to be a better place to work than the previous. If you're taking people's workstation, their ownership of their workstations away, you're taking their drawers away, you're taking certain things away from their workplace, you have to provide them with a better workplace. So when they walk in on the day one, it's something that they like, they're happy to be in, and they know they've been engaged with as part of the process. So that's it from me from the seating side of things. I'll pass back to Katharine, who will just finish things off.
Yes, thank you, David. Actually, I'm just going to pick up on that last point. I think you're absolutely right that it has to be a desirable place and a better place. Because as I go back to my point is the fact that we have to remember why people make choices. And if these are nice places to go to and people are comfortable, then they will make the right decision. So I think that's really important. Just want to finish up a few sort of nip and tuck things on multi-user workstations. Obviously, the chair is really important. We have also got these accessories we need to consider. And there's a few here that I just want to pick out. Desk lamps. Now I'm aging. I suppose I've been aging for a while, actually, but now I'm aging. I mean, good lighting is actually really important for me. And we have to remember that people will need different lighting for different tasks and actually for different eyesight needs. So I think desk lamps are important on multi-user workstations. And actually desktop power. I can't tell you how I don't like scrabbling around under desks and hitting my head getting the power, and actually having a desktop power socket I think is quite liberating. So I know it's silly, but I think these things can make a big difference. Monitor holders, I think, again, are very important. We know how having a poorly placed monitor can really influence people's posture. And it's not just neck posture. You know, if you're leaning forwards, you might as well not have a backrest on your chair. So these accessories can really make you use the best of your workstation. And I think also allowing to use portable IT with a fixed monitor so you can have a dual screen layout, I think is increasingly important. So I think we need to spend some time getting that right as well. A few other small issues I think that can be overlooked. You know, I talked about having things flexible so you can make collaborative areas. We must not forget the data security. I'm sure a lot of you are putting thought into that with the new regulations coming out. Mustn't forget the basics of manual handling. If we're asking people to use multi-work sites, they're going to have to take things with us. Are we making sure that we're looking after that for them? The more relaxed working environments, as David was saying, it's quite positive to be able to use soft seating for some activities. I'll just give you an example though where things go wrong. I went in to do some training one day and I walked through one of these multi-user areas and it was a beautiful area, and on a sofa was somebody on their laptop. 3 to 4 hours later, I came out from teaching and they were in the same place on the same sofa with the same poor posture. Now, that obviously is going to lead to long-term problems. So we need to make sure people make right decisions. Let's not forget the hygiene aspects of multi-user environments, always very appropriate when we have flu around. Noise does seem to be causing issues for people, and I would strongly advise people, if they're creating multi-user environments, to consider the acoustics. I think it can make a big difference to the productivity of people. And a lot of the issues I've been talking about come back to training. People need to understand the risks and know what is available to them so they can make the right decisions. So it's probably not so much training as good education. My last slide is less about equipment and more about good advice. I'm frequently asked about how long should people be working in certain positions, and I've drawn this up. Again, I'm not going to go through it all, but I want the sort of the key message to come through, just to say the worse the position, the more movement is required. And I think that is absolutely vital for these mobile, agile workers to realise that if you do land up in a situation where you're having to do something that's less than ideal, you always have it within yourself to move and mitigate some of the problems. So, as I say, you can come back and look at this on the website. I don't intend to go through it all. And finally, before we sort of go through any questions that you have, I just really want to sort of finish off by saying I think agile working is great. I think it helps us to address the inactivity and give workers control, which I think is really, really needed, so they can work as they feel it works for them. And if they need to be creative and they like music or buzz, they can be in that environment, or they could choose a quiet environment. But we mustn't rely on people to be adaptable. We must make sure they've got the right environments, and we must concentrate on the basics, particularly when inputting. So that really is what I wanted to say. We'll see if we've got any questions. I can see a few. David, have you been looking at any questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple here, Catherine. We've got one saying that the DSE regulations are out of date, particularly about agile working. Do we know or have any indication when they might be updated?
Yes, I mean, I think certainly the document is out of date. I think that the basic premise actually holds true, particularly for if people are inputting a lot. I think the basic tenets sort of remain the same, but you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to apply them per se to people who are flexible and agile. I know that they are not on the agenda to be updated, and I suspect we won't see anything until after Brexit. So I think it is up to all of us to actually do a risk assessment and apply good principles to make sure the health and safety of our workers is maintained and they're able to be productive. So don't know when, suspect it's in the distance, I suppose, is the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's a common question. I think when they first came out, it was 92. I think the last revision was 2002. So they are well overdue. And as I suppose, as champions in this, we constantly put pressure to try and update things and try and make things as simple as possible for clients. We've got some questions to start flying through. We'll try and pick as many of them out as we can. One of them is. And actually, we'll tell you a secret here. We have some dummy questions lined up just in case we don't get asked any, but thankfully this one's been asked anyway. So it says, how do you manage differing DSE needs in an agile office? How can people have a designated specialist chair if they don't have their own space? So thankfully, this is one that we prepared earlier. My thoughts on it are, if you have a better standard of chair, then you're going to have a much reduced need to have specialist seating. That's the simple answer to it. So a chair that's got the right adjustments that can be adaptable to a greater range of people. That being said, there's always going to be a small number of people who have specialist requirements, who may have had back surgery, who have long-term conditions, who have specific requirements. So I think in planning this agile office, there needs to be a space for specialist equipment. The follow-on from that question is, how does that apply for footrest, specialist keyboards, mice, etc.? So again, they need to be readily available. There needs to be storage space for them as well as when they are needed. But I think certainly if the overall standard of the workstation, the ultimate is getting a decent chair, a sit-stand workstation, an adjustable monitor arm, that we know that's the pinnacle. That's not always practical for some organizations, but I think the better you can make the ergonomics of a workstation, the more adaptable you can have it, the less need you're going to have for specialist seating. I mean, is there anything you want to add to that, Katharine?
No, I think you pretty much covered it, actually. I think I would just be reiterating what you were saying. You know, I do think these workstations generally I've seen have more adjustment, but there will always be requirements to do something different for different people. You know, we're all different, and it's good. We just need to make sure there's solutions for each one of us. Can I just take, I'm just leaping in and looking at these questions, just want to talk about undertaking employer risk assessments. Tips. I think we need to be brave, and we need to think about doing, you know, an overall risk assessment rather than getting too funneled down just doing a DSE assessment. So my tip would be to sort of involve the users in that process. And again, as we got people agile, I would say if you can get a learning package where you can gather information, I think that would be very helpful. So I hope that helps. But I think you know, we need to look at ergonomic risk assessments rather than DSE risk assessments, if you see what I mean. So
Fine.
yes.
We've got another one there. Advice on, we've got 50 people in the workspace. Should we plan all 50 workplaces for an agile working environment? I think that's very much differs from one organisation to another. There's obviously going to be peak times where people take holidays where you're going to have less occupancy, but I think that needs to be a sort of longer term occupancy study. And that's something you can undertake yourselves. You can go on a consultancy basis and get organisations to do that for you. But I think clients are very different and have different requirements. I work with one organisation, and their occupancy average occupancy is anywhere between 30 and 40%. They're very, very much community based. The employees are out and about a lot of the time. And then we get other organisations who are very much office based, so they would be up at 80, 85% occupancy. So I think each organisation has its different requirements, and that's probably something that you guys need to sort of work out for yourselves. But there is support in that in terms of, sort of occupancy studies and software that can help with that sort of stuff as well.
Can I just add a little thing there too? It's also, I think it'll vary day to day. I think a lot of clients will tell you that they have, you know, they planned a percentage occupancy, but on certain days of the week, more people choose to come into the office. And I know Posturite, we have found this ourselves too. For me, you know, traveling on a Friday, why would I want to do that? So I'm quite often, you know, close to home on a Friday. So I think we also have to remember why people make choices again. So I think involving people and finding out when they're likely to be in will perhaps help the occupancy as well.
I think that's really interesting, Katharine, because I think I certainly see that changed over the past few years. I'm in London today, and the train into London and the tubes are noticeably quieter today than they were earlier in the week. And I think there is a trend for people to work from home on a Friday. So do you know what, actually traveling across London, I got a taxi earlier, I got the tube in, I managed to get a seat. It was actually more pleasurable than other days of the week this week. So it's interesting. Certainly things are changing.
Yeah, David, sadly we are over time, and I think we're going to have to curtail this, but what we can do is we'll take these questions and if we'll come back to people individually. So what we'll do is we'll answer the questions and we'll put them on our website. And hopefully that will answer things. But if not, I mean, I'd say, you know, please get in touch, wouldn't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So,
well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed it. We always appreciate the feedback. If there's stuff that you'd like to see us presenting on in the future, then please let us know. We're always looking for ideas. We're always looking for more content, and that's essentially driven by you guys. So if there's stuff you want to hear about, whether it's directly Posturite related or loosely related, then please let us know, and we'll do whatever we can to provide the right sort of webinars for you. But yeah, thanks to Katharine. She's always brilliant at this sort of stuff. So thank you for supporting us on this, Katharine.
That's all right. I try. I'm not very good at it, but I do try. Can I just also advertise our next webinar, actually, David? Our next one's going to be on February the 16th, and it's going to be a really interesting one. It's tools to help managers manage mental health issues in the workplace. It's quite an exciting project that's going on, if you're managing any mental health or stress issues within your workplace, I'd strongly advise you to come and listen to that one. It should be. I'm looking forward to it anyway. So. It's February the 16th in your diary.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David. I won't see you later, but I may see you over the next week or two.
Brilliant. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, guys.
Have a good weekend. Okay, then. Bye.